Hi everyone, Taya here from Quilting Delights, and we are on to our next project, which is called In the Shadows. This is a project that I saw made by Jenna Brando in Brazil, and she didn't have a pattern for it, so I designed the quilt based on her pictures. And you can see that we call it In the Shadows because the colors change and there's a shadow effect every time there's a color change. You'll see the entire quilt here in just a second. But I wanted to just talk about how do you design the quilting for a quilt if you don't know how to design. And I will tell you that before we started these projects, which were Under His Wings, which was the feather, and then the quilting primer, and many other projects that we've worked on, smaller ones since then, you learn to develop a sense of what works with the quilt. And I'm going to try and explain some of that to you, but I want you to also have some hope that you can make your quilt look just as beautiful as ours, because when we design and put quilting projects like this together, we draw them out, draft them on large scale paper, and we send you the templates for the quilting so that you too can make your quilt just as exquisite as ours. So let me start out with some things that really work well in terms of tools. We like to use the architectural templates for circles, for drawing circles. And this one is made by Staedtler, I think that's how you pronounce it. And it is available at most office supply or art supply stores. So that's one of the tools that we use a lot. And I have become a much better quilter because when we started out with this, Jenna Brando gave me permission to draw my designs on the quilt. I thought I had to come up with everything freehand, and so I always panicked. I couldn't do it. But now that I can actually draw every single stitch that's going to go down before I stitch it, my quilting has become much better. And that's what I want to be for you, as an encouragement to learn ways that you can do the quilting both from a design standpoint and an actual stitching standpoint. So the other thing that I have found really helpful are two books that were compiled by Karen Burns and Amelia Johansson that are free motion ideas for blocks, borders, and beyond, and corners. So these are put out by That Patchwork Place. There are 180 doodle quilting designs and 180 more doodle quilting designs. But what is so great about these, let me find a couple of the ones that I really like. What is so great about these is that you not only get design ideas. So for example here, this one's called Good Day Sunshine, and it is a compilation of several different quilting ideas that you learn in the front end of this. Every single design also has a starting point and an end point, so you can see how to actually physically put the stitches down on your work. So I love that. We used this one. We used 180 more doodle quilting designs as a guideline for some of the blocks that we're working on. So for example, this is a really great design here and a fun way to do corners and blocks. There are some, let me find the one, I forgot what page it's on. Oh, here's another one. This one, you do a lot of feather work with some scrolls in it, and then you do fill with pebbles. That's a fun one. And let's see if I can find one. Oh, here, this is the one that really inspired us because I love pebbles, but you can't do pebbles your whole life or it gets pretty boring. So this gave us some ideas on how to do different designs inside the pebbles. So these two books are awesome, and we do have them in our store. I'll make sure I put the links to them in the comment section so that you can take a look at those. The other thing that's important is finding really good fabrics, and I love the Maywood Shadow Plays, and so that's what we've done ours out of, but you can do Moda, you can do anything that is more of a solid color. You'll notice that we don't have any print on here at all, and that's because I want to showcase and highlight the quilting, not the fabrics. But Maywood Studios has a really great group of solids. Benartex has a really great group of solids. Moda has a really great group of solids. Any solid that you can find that transitions the colors. So in this particular quilt, we actually have 16 colors of fabric And that's where the In the Shadows comes in, because you can see how it transitions from one color to the next. We've also done this in a white background, and we've done it in a black background. It works out to a really great baby quilt size. We put together fat quarter bundles, and those fat quarter bundles will actually make 4 of these blocks with purchasing background. So the fat quarter bundles look like this, and the kits look like this. So one kit has all 16 fabrics in fat 8s, and believe it or not, if you cut carefully, there's enough fabric here to make 2 of these. So that is the way the kits and the pattern work out. You can purchase the pattern separately. If you have your own fabrics, you can purchase the kit with either white background or black background, and you can order a fat quarter bundle with all 16 colors, and those are available on our website. All you have to do is go to our website, info@quiltingdelights.com, type in the shadows, and the pattern and kits will come up with suggested products for the others. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention was we also like the Aurifil thread for quilting, and we have set this up so that every quadrant, there's eight quadrants, what I would call 8 quadrants, and each one of them has its own color. So this is going to be the dark blue, and then this is the blue, and then the greens. And you'll see when we do the quilting in our next video. Today we're going to talk about design and how to pull that all together, but in our next video you're going to see that these colors, these 8 colors, help transition from one area to another. It's actually really kind of fun how this all comes together. I'm very excited. Okay, so we have all of those available for you, but what is most important and what you guys are most interested in is how did we design this quilt? So how did we design the quilting on this quilt? So I will say to you that I've been quilting for about 25 years now, and I have tried everything and done most of it wrong, and then I've tried some things and done them really well. This is one of the things that I had to try and work, and I'm finally understanding how quilting works, and so I can explain it to you. So one of the things that you want to look at, if you have a quilt like this that has a lot of very sharp angles, a lot of squares, a lot of sharp angles, a lot of straight lines, the quilting is going to dress that up. And by that I mean, for example, when we first did this, one of the template options is this center square. And we put that on there, we drew it on, and this is, again, you have permission to draw as much as you want. We drew this on, and when we drew it, we looked at it and we went, oh, that's kind of boring. I'm not sure I even like that. So we ironed it off, and I said to Sarah, we need to come up with some other designs that are interesting, more interesting. So this one is the one that we decided on. And what's cool about it is you still get the overall effect of the In the Shadows quilt, but now the center of the quilt, the focus of the quilt, is really interesting. And it's interesting because we've added circles, we've added pebbles, we've added curved lines, these little rainbow lines, and now when you put this in the center of the quilt, it actually brings life to the quilt. So we've put on the template, we have 4 separate designs, and trust me, you can use these on any quilt. They're not designed just for this. If you have another quilt, or any quilt, or you want to make a quilt and have it be about the quilting, these are templates that you can use over and over again. We've set them up so that they match the size of the center here. And you'll get these you'll get these in full-size templates. This one I think is 24 by 24. And it comes to you rolled up and ready to trace off. So you're going to trace it off on, if you're doing the white one, you're going to trace it. I'm going to talk about doing this on dark fabrics in just a second. But you can use any of these designs for the center. And then the trick is, what thread color are you going to quilt it in? Well, on this particular quilt, I'm doing all the quilting in the white, in white thread, and then any place that has color will have colored thread. You're going to see we do something different with the black one here in just a couple of minutes. All right, so just remember, anything that's real angular, you're going to do circles and curves to tone that down and bring some life back to it. So then the question was, what do we do in the corners? And I don't like a lot of white space. I don't like a lot of white space because it makes me nervous. And the reason it makes me nervous is I never quite know what to put in it. So this time what I did was Sarah and I sat down and I said, I think we need something really curly and round and dramatic for the corners. So that's exactly what we did. We did a feather that went both directions with swirls in the outside edges and plumes on the outside, and it's just absolutely stunning. So that's going to go in all four corners. Now, you ask, how do you come up with these designs? I spent hours on Pinterest. I pulled lots of designs from books. We just really compiled and put together several ideas all into one. And that's what happens with design. I'm not a good creator, but I am a fabulous editor. So I can take 2 or 3 different things and put them into one to make it work the way I want it to. And that's exactly what we did here. So the corners are going to have this beautiful plume. And then underneath every outside edge, we've drawn a leaf that is stunning as well. So that's going to go across the bottom. So you're going to draw / trace those onto your background first, and then you don't have to draw your fills, but I do better when I have a pattern to follow. And so on my quilt, I actually did all of the fill work, drew all the fill work, or had Sarah draw all the fill work. But I will do my feather first, and I will do my leaves first, and then I'll go back in and I'll do all of the pebbles. And we call these deviled eggs, but they're just a circle inside of an oval. And they just break up that pebbliness. One thing I will say to you is you want to be careful, especially in a large area, as much white space as we have here. My tendency, and Sarah's tendency, is to do super small pebbles. And I have a quilt hanging in our bathroom here that I started doing pebbles the size of a pea. And it's just a small wall hanging, but I got halfway up and I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be old and in a wheelchair before I ever get this finished, and I've never gone back to do it. So beware, you're better off always starting out bigger. And that's one of the things that I was talking to Sarah about when we put this all together. I said, Sarah, big and dramatic, and that's what I'm saying to all of you. You want to have this big and dramatic because it's going to translate. If you do your quilting too small, people don't see it. You've got to have the open space between the stitching to actually have it pop and have the quilting show up. So you can see what we did here in the outside edges and with the leaves. And then in the center, we've drawn a quarter of the design because you can trace it off or put it on your light table. We have the Caterpillar Monster Ultra Light Table, and it's big enough for us to trace most of this off. So you can see we've gone 1/4 in the corner, and then you're just going to rotate it and trace it, rotate it and trace it, rotate it and trace it. But the question was, what do we do and how do we do it? So I said to, we were working on this as a group, and I said, all right, here's what I think needs to happen in the corners. We need to put matchsticks across the seams. So there's a seam here and here. If we do the matchstick quilting across that seam, no one's going to know that seam is there. And that is part of the fun of the quilting, is to quilt it so that you actually can't see the physical pattern of the piecing. So every corner is going to have this matchstick and straight line quilting. So of course, if you've done any of our work or if you're just getting started, you always want to do your ruler work first and then do your free motion quilting last. So on every corner, we're going to change thread colors because we're going to use a different thread color on every corner. And you're going to do your matchstick quilting and your straight line quilting in this color, that color, and that color. And then I said, well, how do we do the corners and what do you want to do here in the center? And we decided we liked, again, the curved piecing to add drama and soften up how many straight lines there are, but we also wanted some straight quilting to make sure that it had the flow to the outside. So that's what the lines do, is they flow it to the outside. So we picked points, like right here, we picked this point to do a diamond from here to here. And then we went down almost halfway and used one of our oval rulers to draw these lines. And then we just backed up an inch and drew another one. So it's really flexible in how you can design and draw your own. But you want to find points that are natural breaks to do that curved piecing. And then, of course, I do circles and everything, so that's where our architectural template comes in. And I've learned how to do these free motion with my Bernina stitch regulator, but all of these curves are going to get done with the rulers so that they're super, super clean and super tight. So that's how you're going to quilt these out. You're going to draw everything first, and we just use a friction pen, but you can also use a water-soluble pen. On the darker fabrics, you're going to want to do those with probably the sew line pen and trace it out in white chalk, and then it'll just wash off when you're done. So those are my ideas and my recommendations on design, how to do it. And sometimes it'll take me 2 or 3 days to actually come up with what looks best on a quilt. And you can't be afraid to mark it wrong. In other words, mark it with a design that you don't like, and then erase it and remark it with a design that you do like. I think this looks spectacular, and I can't wait to get that thread down onto that design. Okay, let me talk to you about how to mark the black quilt. Because the black quilt, of course, you can't mark by putting it on a light box. There's nothing to see through, nothing to see through. So the question on black quilts, people don't do a lot of dark quilts because they don't know how to mark them. But we've come up with some tools that are going to be really, really cool for you to use. And one of those, so see here, we've already started marking this one, and this one we did a different design in the middle. I can also tell you that on this one, I am going to stitch the feathers out in variegated thread. I'll probably do these blocks with the same Aurifil threads to get that flow, but this one I'm going to do the feather and the leaves and part of the center, probably the feathers and the swirl in here, in the variegated, because I want it to pop to the top, and then all of the background will be done in black thread. Now, I want to talk to you also, if you're going to do this, one of the things that you need to be aware of is prepping your fabrics before you sew them together. So I was in a rush, and I thought, oh, I'll just sew these together and I'll Mary Ellen's best press it later. So why do we need to Mary Ellen's best press? Well, you've either got to do Mary Ellen's best press or Material Magic, because the stiffer the quilt top is, the better and easier your quilting is going to be. But the problem with this one was I was in a rush, and I made the quilt, and then I sprayed it with Mary Ellen's best press, and because we have one fabric, a solid fabric on the outside, and the shadow plays on the inside, it shrank differently. So now I have to figure out if I'm going to be able to salvage this, or if I have to make another black one and prep the fabrics before I get started. So rushing when you're doing quilting is never a good plan. Never a good plan. But regardless of that, I'll deal with that later, and I'll let you know what the answer is in our next video. Regardless of that, the question is, how do you mark a black quilt or a dark quilt? So there is a product out there called, I think it's pronounced Saral, S-A-R-A-L. And what it is a tracing paper. How many of you remember in the old days we would use carbon paper between two pieces of paper to get a copy? Well, it's kind of like that, and it comes in different colors. This is white, and this is called wax-free. You want to make sure that you get a wax-free product. But what happens is you trace the pattern off of our template onto freezer paper, and Sarah is meticulous in how she traces the final, we call it inking, in her inking on the templates. You don't have to be that meticulous when you trace it onto the freezer paper, because we just need the pattern. So then you're going to position it, and you can see through it to see where you want to lay this down. You're going to position it, and then you're going to slide a piece of this Saral paper underneath. And it's going to lay on top like that. And you can pin your freezer paper or whatever you want to do. But then you're going to trace all of these feathers, and you're going to trace this entire design. And it's going to transfer through this ceril paper onto the quilt top. Now, here's the thing about it. When you're working on the black one with the ceril paper, you can only mark 1/4 or one section at a time. You can't mark it all at the same time because it does rub off. It rubs off. It's a chalk. It's like chalk. And if you have too much of it marked at a time, then you're going to, by the time you get to the 4th corner, you're not going to have anything left. So my suggestion is when you get ready to do this, that you mark the black corner and you mark one leaf and then you stitch those, and then you go to the next corner and you stitch those, and the next corner you stitch those, and the next corner, and you finish up. Now, with that said, I want to remind you that in the quilting process, which we will work on in the next video, in the quilting process, we're going to work from the center to the outside. So on the black one, you'll probably just have it spray basted and stitched around the outside edge, and you'll work your way from the inside to the outside. I hope this has been a fun introduction for you to our next project, In the Shadows. We do have Zoom classes coming up on this, but you're also just absolutely welcome to sign up on our website, get the pattern and the quilting templates, and we will post the 2 videos, the introduction on the design side and the actual quilting of this. We'll post those on our YouTube channel, and we would love to see your finished projects. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel and post your finished projects on Facebook. Both of those sites are Quilting Delights, and we will look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thanks.